They say every tragedy starts with one small misunderstanding. For Marcus, it began with a shadow, a stare, and a question that should never have been asked. That moment changed everything. The afternoon sun spilled across Riverside Park, painting everything in a soft golden glaze. The fountain's water shimmered, its rhythm blending with the laughter of children and the rustle of dry leaves. The city beyond the gate seemed to disappear, leaving behind a pocket of calm that belonged to no one and everyone. Among the park's benches sat a man named Marcus Davies, quickly absorbed in a worn paperback novel. The pages fluttered now and then in the lazy wind, but his focus never wavered. His calmness stood out, not loud but present, like a still lake surrounded by noise. Unseen by most, another pair of eyes watched from across the street. Observant, analytical, and cautious. The kind of gaze that had seen too much of the world to ever truly rest. In a gray and blue patrol car parked along the curb, Officer Brain Hykins adjusted his review mirror. His career had spanned over 2 decades, years of routine repetition and instinct. The city's rhythm was etched into his veins. Every rustle of movement, every unfamiliar face triggered a silent checklist in his mind. When his gaze settled on Marcus, something inside him paused. A quiet alert went off, a gut feeling sharpened by years of policing, but dulled by bias he never questioned. There was no sound of alarm, no cry for help, just a man reading a book. Still, Brennan's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. A faint message murmured through his radio, a report of a subject, somewhere near the ADO, matching only in fragments, male mid-30s, dark jacket. It was vague, but for Brain it was enough. Brain stepped out of the car, the door shut with a muted thud that broke the park's quiet rhythm. His boots pressed against the gravel path as he walked closer, each step echoing with unspoken authority. Marcus didn't move. His eyes flicked up for a second, briefly meeting the approaching figure, then he fell back to his book. The scene remained painfully ordinary, yet something invisible had shifted. The air between them thickened not with noise but with tension. It was the kind that was not born from conflict, but from assumption. The people nearby began to notice. A mother called her child a little closer. A jogger turned down his music, pretending to stretch. No words were exchanged, yet an understanding spread through the small crowd. Something was happening or about to. The officer stopped near the bench, his shadow cutting across Marcus' book. The page rippled if disturbed by more than the wine. The sunlight seemed colder now. In the space of that silence, a perception had already made its judgment. Brain reached for his notepad, flipping it open, his posture casual but loaded with control. Marcus closed up his book slowly, resting it on his lap. The stillness of the moment made it clear. 2 men stood in the same place, but on different sides of something far bigger than either could see. The birds kept chirping, the fountain still sang, but beneath that peaceful noise, an unease grew like a tremor waiting to be named. From a distance, a teenager held up his phone, recording the scene with great fascination. He was not sure what was happening, but the sight of an officer standing over a calm man on bench seemed quite capturing. The camera lens blinked red, small but alive, like an eye that never blinked. The world had changed in small ways. Moments like this is no longer faded into memory. They became evidence, replayed, debated, and dissected. This one would be no different. Moments later, Brain's radio cracked again. The voice on the other end was calm, Rudy. Unit 12 suspect confirmed north side of the park. Wearing a gray hoodie, Marcus wore an army jacket. For a heartbeat, time hung suspended between truth and ego. Brain's eyes flickered, his assistant shifted, but his hesitation lingered too much. What should have ended simply straight into something heavier. Eventually, Brain stepped back, his notepad closing softly. He turned without a word, walking back to his car. Marcus remained still for a moment longer, his fingers brushing a cover of his book, as if grounding himself back into calm. The car door shut the injured rebel. Yet the air didn't return to normal. It stayed tainted, marked by a quick stain of misunderstanding. The teenager with the phone lowered his camera, unsure what he had just captured, but deep down he knew it would matter little. The night, the city lights shimmered off the dainty-lit trees. Inside his patrol car, Officer Harkin sat parked beneath a flickering streetlight, his hand resting on the steering wheel. The silence of the vehicle was heavy, filled with the hum of distant sirens and the echo of an encounter he couldn't quite reply. He told himself it was routine, a misunderstanding, nothing serious, but the mind rarely obeys the heart's orders. Somewhere deep inside, the movement rebels like a broken reel. Over and over it too quiet to silence. Riverside Park slept under a dull moonlight. The wind moved softly through the trees, bending the branches, scattering leaves across the benches. On one of them a book still lay open, left behind by Marcus, and when the tensions had finally been too much to stay, its pages rustled faintly in the dark until one flipped open to the line, scrimpto and pencil. Perception creates its own truth, and truth often arrives too late. The camera of the story pulled back slowly, showing the empty park, the lonely bench, and the faint reflection of blue police light flashing in the far distance. A foreshadowing of the tragedy waiting to unfold. Riverside Park changed when daylight died. The laughter of children was replaced by the whisper of wine against empty swings. Street lamps bled faint orange halos through a thin mist that had drifted in from the river. The calm that had defined the afternoon now felt haunted, hollow, most watchful. Miles away, Marcus David walked home under the same haze. Each step echoed softly on the wet pavement. He carried the weight of an unfinished day, not anger, not fear, just the heavy exhaustion of being seen through the wrong lens. Behind him, a silent horde then faded. The city was sliding toward trouble at 9:47 p.m. A silent alarm tripped at a corner convenience store near the north edge of the park. The clerk's panicked call came through dispatch in fragments. A robbery, a masked figure, a gun. Cameras caught only shadows, the blur of a dark jacket, and hurried, hand sweeping cash into a bag. Within minutes, patrol cars slid through the streets, light flashing red and blue across as well. Among them was Officer Brian Harkins. He heard the call, feared the old tug of purpose, and turned his wheel toward Riverside once again. The night had brought him back to the same ground, as if the city itself refused to let the day end peacefully. Marcus was only a few blocks from home when he noticed the noise, the sudden symphony of engines, radios, and distant shout. He stopped beneath a lamppost, its light cutting a pale circle around him. Rain began to fall, thin and silver, coating his jacket in specks that looked blacker under the glow. He didn't know that somewhere nearby any witness had already given police a description. Tall man, dark jacket, mid-30s, heading south. The pieces were assembling on the inside. The control room voices overlapped. Two suspects, two different directions, conflicting timelines. But cows rarely waited for clarity. The command went out. All nearby units checked the part perimeter. Brain squeezer swung into the familiar road. The rain streaked across his windshields like static. His mind replayed the image of the man from earlier, the calm face, the steady posture, the book. He didn't know why, but the memory felt unfinished. He pressed harder on the accelerator. At 10:12 p.m., Marcus crossed the east entrance of the park. The lamps there were weaker, half-burned balls that left pockets of darkness between them. Somewhere behind him, tries flashed through puddles, stopping with a heavy hiss. Marcus turned his head just enough to see the silhouette of a cruiser at the gate. He didn't run. He simply kept walking, unaware that the same veteran officer was stepping into the rain once again, following a train ridden by coincidence. The distance between them closed, measured not by space but by weight. A garbled message crackled through Brain's radio, something about a suspect fleeing towards the southern side. Static shield half the words he thought it had. East entrance. The coincidence became conviction. He raised his flashlight, the beam cutting through the mind, illuminating only pieces. A sleeve here, a shadow there. The light muffed Marcus for a second before the wine carried the rain sideways. Breaking the image apart, what followed was a silence too thick for sound to move through from an apartment window facing the park. A woman watched the scene unfold. She couldn't hear voices, only saw the play of a light. The flashlight, the accuser's blinks, the two shapes moving in the rain. She thought it looked like confusion, not pursuit. She considered calling someone, but hesitated, believing the officer had everything under control. Down below, the story was writing itself in real time, one misunderstanding at a time. Lightning cracked across the sky, blinding white for a heartbeat. The thunder followed, masking any smaller sound beneath it. What happened in the instant would later be described in reports, testimony, and speculation. But no one truly saw it clearly. By the time the eco-headed Marcus lay still against the grove path, rain collecting in small puddles around him, the world has shrunk to the hum of distant sirens and the hollow rhythm of trains. In the darkness, an officer stood frozen, hand trembling, the smell of gunpowder fading into storm. Within minutes, flashlightings consumed the park. Officer moved quickly, securing the area, drawing tape, taking statements. Brain stood apart from them, soaked, motionless, staring at the figure of the ground off it. The world had slipped out of focus. Cameras arrived next. Local news vans parking at the curb, reporters stepping out with plastic covers over their gear. The same teenager from earlier recognized the scene from his video and whispered to his friend, "That's him." What had been a quick misunderstanding hours ago was a new storm of noise, light, and disbelief. By midnight, the footage from the afternoon encounter had already spread online. 2 clips, one of peace, one of the tragedy, now merged in the public eye, shaping a narrative faster than True could catch up. At the precinct, a statement was drafted. Officer responded to a suspect fitting the description of an armed robber. Shots were fired following known compliance, but outside the walls, the city was already awake, angry, divided. Rain continued to fall over Riverside Park, washing away footprints, blurring edges, and carrying it the faint echo of sirens into the night. Somewhere beyond the curtains of rain, justice had just lost its balance, and no one yet knew how far it would fall. The news of a park incident spread like wildfire through silent channels. Whispers on social media, fragments of phone recordings, distorted retellings. Each variant twisted the truth until the story had many faces but no clear shape. Marcus' name was mentioned once, the forgotten beneath the louder headlines. The park was clean, the bench wiped, and yet the air still carried the scent of tension. In the precinct, Brain sat behind his desk, staring at the bank report on his screen. His fingers hovered over this keyboard, unable to type. Every word he considered fit like confession. He adjusted the details, softened the edges, built a variant of events that would fit protocol. The truth was malleable, hair shaped by fear and habit. When he hit save, the lie became official. Night fell over youth, I straight-laced puzzle family in the rain. Somewhere a police siren wailed, not from agency, but as a song the city had learned to hum in the background. Marcus walked the empty streets alone, his reflection fragmented in puddles. Every sound behind him felt watched. He was not guilty of anything, yet the world treated him like a ghost who had escaped his grave. From the darkness of a park tar, two men watched Marcus' movements. They were not police, just looker-watchers drawn by the rumor and prejudice. In cities like this, suspicion didn't need proof, it only needed direction. When Marcus paused under a flickering lamp, one of them whispered something and the other laughed. A quick, cruel sound. Marcus didn't turn. He just kept walking, as silent as through was only his protection. Breen couldn't sleep. His wife's voice faded into the background as the ticking clock grew louder. In his mind, the park replayed on the loop, the look in Marcus' eyes, the tense and almost incident guilt at him. But he called it duty. He poured another glass of whiskey, convincing him he had done nothing wrong. Shed every swallow burnt like truth, refusing to stay buried. In the early hours, Brain opened in an old police database. He typed Nike's names, half hoping to find something. Anything to justify his unease. The screen blinked blank. Empty. No records, no criminal history, nothing. It was as if the man he had judged was cleaner than himself. He closed the laptop hard, but the emptiness stayed with him. Across the city, security footage from the park mysteriously disappeared. Files labeled for review were erased before anyone could see them. A report noted technical malfunction. The system blamed the weather, but one technician paused longer than others, noticing the deletion times aligned perfectly with Brain's shift hours. He said nothing, just saved a silent copy on a hidden drive for a reason he couldn't yet name. Marcus returned to Riverside Park the following week. The bench was still there, quite and unmarked, yet the park felt heavier now, as if the ground itself remembered what had happened. He sat again, book in hand, pretending to read. The breeze moved gently through the trees, and somewhere a siren wailed again, softer this time, almost like an apology. Breen drove by the park again, unplanned, as if drawn by guilt he couldn't shake. His eyes found Marcus instantly, same bench, same calm posture. The memory resurfaced so vividly it blurred the line between past and present. He gripped the steering wheel, torn between confronting him or driving away. He did neither. He just sat there, watching the way this haunted man studies the coast he created. From a distance, behind a row of trees, someone else was watching, a woman with a small camera recording quietly. She had been at the park that day, unseen, and had captured fragments of the truth. Now her hands trembled as she reviewed the footage. The video showed no aggression from Marcus, only fear. She exhaled slowly, realizing she held something that could change everything. But in the world where justice slept with one eye open, truth was a dangerous thing to hold. The woman sat alone in her small apartment, the light from her laptop flickering against the walls. The video file was short, just 2 minutes, but it carried the silence of injustice louder than any sound. She watched it again and again, mark her stillness blurred by an officer's suspicion. Each replay felt heavier, as if the footage itself demanded to be seen. Her fingers hovered over the upload button. One click could ignite a fire across the city. Another could bury the truth forever. Fear whispered in her ear, fear of power or retribution, of being the next shadow erased. She closed the laptop gently, choosing delay over courage. But once truth is seen, it never really goes away. Brian said in his car outside, the reeking cigarette smoking curling in the air. The same file he thought deleted now haunted him. Truly rumors. Someone had seen something. He could feel the walls closing in. The badge on his chest no longer felt like authority. It felt like a burden. Every reflection in his windshield looked like judgment staring back. Rain fell over Riverside, slow at first, then heavy, drenching the streets and washing the city's colors in gray. Marcus walked through the downpour without an umbrella, water soaking through his shirt. It was not just rain, it felt like the world refusing to clean itself, to be washed from windows safe behind glass. While he walked, exposed, unguarded, yet unbroken. At the edge of the city, the woman made her choice. The video uploaded quickly, without fanfare, onto a small independent site. No sound, no commentary, just raw footage, unedited toot. Within hours, it spread through digital corridors like wildfire. The internet gave the movement a voice, one that couldn't be silent. By morning, the city was no longer quiet. News channels replayed the clip with myriad outrage. Politicians offered rehearsed concern, and the police department scrambled for control. Brian watched the screen from his office, the color draining from his face. The truth had escaped the confines of his report, and now it had teeth. Riverside Park filled with people, strangers holding candles, poachers, and unanswered questions. They stood by the bench where Marcus had once sat, their silence heavier than shouting. The park that had once held peace now held reckoning. The air carried the scent of wet earth and rebellion. Brain tried to drown the noise with alcohol and Daniel, but the voices outside his window wouldn't fade. Every headland carried his shadow, the department suspending him, pending investigation. The walls of his house felt inside louder than the city outside. He started at his badge on the table, the metal glinting faintly under the lamp. Once a symbol of duty, now reminded of Rome. Marcus avoided the protest. He watched from afar, hidden in the crowd. He did not want to become a symbol. He only wanted peace, but peace no longer recognized him. People pointed, some whispered this name. The world had built him into something larger than life, yet he felt smaller than ever. Like a man trapped inside his own reflection. Late one night, rain drove to Riverside Park. The air was cold, the sky moonless. He parked near the same tree, the same spot where everything began. He stepped out, stood in the rain, and stared at the empty bench. His breath fogged in the night air. He took off his patch, looked at it one last time, and placed it on the wet wood. The rain struck it like tiny hammers, washing away its shines. In the silence, something inside him finally cracked. This sound was not loud, but it was final. The rain stopped just before dawn, leaving the park sogged and silent. Mist hovered above the grass, blurring the world into shades of gray. A jogger passed by and froze when he saw the bat resting on the bench. Its gold green wings whirled under the pegged sunrise, surrounded by puddles that mirrored the sky. He did not touch it. He simply sterilizing that sambers like men could lose their meaning overnight. The department lost an internal review while Swearpool timeless examined, and officers questioned every document Brain had edited now stood against him. Behind closed doors, superiors whispered about damage control. The truth was no longer about justice. It was about containment. A statement would be issued, an apology crafted, and another game added to the growing list of incidents. Brain never returned home. His car was found near the river, engine off, door open, keys still inside. The current was calm that morning, deceptive in its peace. No note, no goodbye. Only the impression of boots in wet and leading toward the water. And then, nothing. The department called it voluntary leave. The papers called it disappearance, but the city called it what it was, consequence. Days turned into weeks. People still visited the bench. Some left flowers, some in silence, and some just passed by pretending not to look. The bench became more than wood and metal. It became a marker of something unfinished. The air still held the echo of that afternoon. The unspoken fear, the weight of watching, the fracture between perception and truth. Marcus moved to another part of the city seeking anonymity. But anonymity was a luxury the world wouldn't give him. Cameras followed him, stories speculated, strangers treating him like a symbol rather than a man. He avoided their eyes, avoided the questions, and lived quietly, reading, walking, surveying. Yet, even in solitude, the sound of that park lingered like a heartbeat that refused to stop. The technician who had saved the hidden copy of the footage opened it one last time. He hesitated, then added a note at the evidence preserved in case history forgets again. He saved the file on multiple drives and sent one to an anonymous archive. Truth, he believed, should outline everyone involved, even if no one ever saw it. Over time, the city moved on. New crimes replaced all ones. New scandals took the front pages, but beneath the surface, Riverside changed in small, quiet ways. Officers hesitated before judging, people failed before believing, and silence was no longer trusted. The park was renamed Davis Creek, not officially, but the people who whispered it so often that the name stuck. A small foundation appeared months later that Marcus Davis initiated, its funding company, Unity Education Legal Aid, and Equality Workshops. No one knew who started it. Some said it was Marcus, others believed it was the woman with the camera. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that something good had grown from something dark. Fragile but real, Marcus stood by the river one evening, the same water that had taken an officer and carried away a lifetime of care. The sky burned orange over the horizon. He closed his eyes, listening to the quake ripples. There was no cloyer, no Grange's seas, only the steady flow of time, carrying everything forward, washing nothing clean, but softening the pain. The world had not changed completely, but Maybe it had shifted just enough. Riverside Park breathed again under the dust. Children laughed, birds returned, and the wind guided the calm different before home. Wiser, gentler, quieter, the old man still stood, now weathered. Its metal edges dulled by time, a faint engraving appeared on its boots, graved by some anonymous hand. Truth never dies in silence. As the sun set beyond the trees, its golden light touched the bench one last time, not as forgiveness, but as remembrance. The park exhaled, the story was over, yet his shadows would live forever.